Hello and welcome to the Cloud in a Jar lab. Today I'm going to be making a couple clouds in a glass jar. This is something you could very easily try at home. You only need a couple of things. A glass jar with a lid. I'm using an old pasta sauce jar. Some ice. Smaller ice cubes are better. The Chick-fil-A ice is the best. Hot water. A lighter or matches. Matches would work better, but I am out of matches, and a lighter also works. And some kind of aerosol can. Glass cleaner is what I'm using. You could use hairspray. You could use air freshener. Any kind of aerosol would work. So you need three things to make a cloud. You need warm, moist air. You need that warm, moist air to cool down as it rises up in the atmosphere. And you need something called a condensation nuclei, which is something for the water particles to condense onto. So what's happening is you've got warm air that's got humidity, it is moist near the ground. As you go up in the air, it cools down. As you go up in altitude, remember, temperature drops. So as the warm air rises, it cools down. When it cools down, the air can't hold as much moisture. The relative humidity is increasing until eventually it reaches its dew point, and that water now can't be held by the air anymore, and it condenses. Clouds aren't gas, they are actually liquid water. So you need something for that liquid water to hold onto, to condense onto, and that is the condensation nuclei. So we are going to do 3 trials where we see different ways we can potentially make a cloud. So for trial 1, I'm just going to go ahead and pour some of my hot water into the bottom of the jar. You can see immediately it kind of fogged up the sides. That is condensation. This hot water down here is starting to evaporate because it's so warm, and it is condensing on the sides of the jar. I'm going to put the lid back on and put some ice up on the top of the lid. This represents my altitude. As you go up in altitude, it cools down. As you move up in the jar, I've got the cold ice at the top. And you can see there was some condensation, but beyond that, there isn't really much else going on in the jar. It's sometimes easier to see if you've got a dark background and you shine a flashlight on it. But even now, it doesn't look like there's anything swirling around. It looks like it's just kind of that foggy condensation. And that's about all that we would expect to see when there's no condensation nuclei. I don't have anything in there besides the sides of the jar for the water to condense onto. So it's not surprising to me that I'm not really getting much of a cloud. But if I go ahead, I'll swirl this around a bit to kind of wipe the sides of the jar down. And we'll start trial 2. For trial 2, I'm going to be using smoke as my condensation nuclei. Again, this might work a little better if you had matches, because then you get a little bit more soot. But the smoke from a lighter works also. So I'm just going to hold this lighter in here for a second, let some smoke gather, and then put my lid back on with the ice on top. So now I've got the warm, moist air down here. The water is evaporating, and as it gets up to the top, as it rises in altitude, it is cooling and condensing because I've got my cold air at the top. And now I have smoke in there, and that smoke is something that the water particles can hold on to as they condense. So if I get my dark background and look with a flashlight, if you look closely, I can see something swirling around in there. It might be hard to tell from your angle, but it is more foggy than just if there was just condensation on the side of the jar. And in fact, if I were to take the lid off, all of that coming out from the top of the jar, that is not smoke from the lighter, that is a cloud. That is liquid water vapor particles that have condensed onto the smoke, and all of that coming out now is a cloud. To start trial 3, I'm going to first go ahead and rinse this jar out. I'm going to use the water on the inside. I just don't want any more smoke in there. So I don't want smoke. I'm going to use something else as my condensation nuclei. I'm going to go ahead and add more hot water into the bottom of the jar. Now I am going to use an aerosol as my condensation nuclei. So I've got glass cleaner, but again, hairspray, air freshener, anything like that would work. I'm going to do just a couple of quick squirts of aerosol and then put my ice back on top. Now we aren't quite as foggy. There isn't quite as much condensation on the inside of the jar. So hopefully I should be able to see. If you look closely, especially towards the top, you might be able to see some movement and some things swirling around on the inside. That is the cloud starting to form. Remember, it's the condensation nuclei that it's able to hold on to as the water vapor condenses. So if I give it just a second to form, wait a minute for it, especially up at the top, you can see more swirling around of the cloud forming. And now if I go ahead and take my lid off, that's cloud coming out. That is not any kind of vapor from the aerosol. That is a cloud. So, a couple of what if scenarios. What if instead of warm, moist water I had down here, it was just sand? If there was no warm, moist water, it was just sand, then there wouldn't be any water down here to evaporate and then eventually condense to form the cloud, so you wouldn't really get any clouds. That's why over the desert, you don't see many clouds. What if there was nothing in the air to cling to? If there wasn't any smoke or aerosol or particulates in the air? Then that's like trial one, where it was just my hot water and ice. There's not really anything to stick to. There's no condensation nuclei. It's going to be much harder to form a cloud. You can get clouds that form near the surface of the Earth, but remember, the surface of the Earth is kind of our heat source for most of this. So having it cool enough to condense is going to be a little harder, but that's why on cooler mornings you're more likely to have fog or low clouds, because it is able to drop in temperature as it rises in altitude only a little bit. So that is a cloud in a jar.